if culture follows our music, our art, our influence, our soft power, then we need to walk in that authority. And we need to say, hey, maybe it's time that the world think about us in a completely different way. And it starts with us seeing ourselves in a different light. Okay, so let's jump into what China did, because you're absolutely right. I sign on to all social media platforms, TikTok specifically though, and I was bombarded with sales that I never knew existed. China changed the game.
They did.
Okay,
They did.
They signed on and said, "Y'all about to find out today." Here's what I want to say on a serious note, though. You have hard power, which is missiles, military, and everything else, and you know the money of a government. And then you've got soft power, which is culture, fashion, music, all these things that make people want to come to America, to the West. And so a lot of times people watch our films and they're like, we love America. And so what China is realizing is fashion is a huge soft power. And a lot of times when you say made in China, people immediately think cheap. Because a lot of the world's been brainwashed, America included, to think made in China equals cheap goods. And what China has done is said, all the luxury items that you love is actually made and crafted in China. China equals luxury. And then they said, since y'all decided to play around with us, we're going to throw everything on the low for about $10.99.
$38,000 items for $400.
$400. You getting Timbs, you getting Nikes, you getting Gucci bags, you getting everything you can imagine.
Louis.
And I'm like, they out here doing live sales. I said, hold on.
Literally was like, if you call now, you get this for $200 instead of $400.
I said, are you allowed to do this?
They said, look, we understand the tariffs. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this $16,000 item and get it to you for under $800. So you don't have to deal with this tariff. Now, you know why I can do that?
Why?
Because it's made right here in China.
It's made right
We're
here.
not just luxury. We are the home of luxury.
We are the home of, started a brand new conversation. I'm like, within years, if they can retrain the world to say China is the home of luxury, imagine how much influence and aspiration they'll have in so many people's hearts and minds. But here's the question I got to ask to Black people. We were spending $4,000, $5,000 for items that they made clear to us this week only cost a fraction of it.
You being nice with a fraction.
Like
a millifraction.
$50.
Yes.
And they had already disclosed the Dior stuff where it was like the thousands of dollars, the bags only cost $80. So I'm like, when you're realizing that you're spending thousands of dollars for products that only cost $50, $100 to create, you got to ask yourself some really real questions. And the question I would ask to Black people is, what did we think we were purchasing? What were we purchasing? Not what do we think. What were we purchasing?
Actually getting? Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would say, I purchase name brand because I want the recognition or affirmation. I want people to see me as successful. But the reality is, what if we are looking at it all the wrong way? And I'm not hating on fashion houses, but I'm asking those that have money, that work hard for their money, that want to steward their money well, is this the wisest thing to be spending it on, when now we're realizing that, what are you really spending it on? It's $100 bag that's no bit better than another bag. And the only thing is they slap the name on it and then they charge you $7,000 for it.
And then you get to walk around saying, look, I've got this $7,000 bag. And you really have a $100 bag.
I know. It's crazy. You sent the video to me the other week about how in the 1950s they sent training.
Goodness
gracious. Training videos for how to sell to Black
people. Language warning trigger.
Yeah.
For how to sell to the Negro.
How to sell to the Negro.
Yeah.
The secret of selling to the Negro is expressed in one word. That word is recognition. Now, there's nothing unusual about that. People want to be recognized. They need recognition.
Yeah, found this video online where, like you said, in the 50s, essentially, there were these businessmen who were training other business leaders who happen to be white at the time on, hey, essentially, these black communities, these black individuals are a part of society now to a level to where they have money to spend, and they walk step by step through literally how to sell to the Negro.
How to sell to the Negro.
You have to approach them relatively emotionally. You have to understand when you sell them these quality goods, as it said in this little video, which obviously I had thoughts about it as someone going back and watching it in 2025. But essentially they were saying, when you try to sell to black people, you have to understand, one, they're huge on quality. I think we still see that today, right?
The Negro doesn't like anything it doesn't like anything that's not name brand, is what he said. That was the quote.
Because they believe that means highest quality.
They don't want to be switched when they get ready to check out.
When their mind, correct. You do not try to change their mind.
Do not try to suggest.
So if I said, Louis is the way to go, and that's what we do, and you literally had a better product for a lower price, how dare you suggest that to me?
Now, when you're coming out of a time where you're fighting for rights and fighting for equality and fighting for dignity.
Correct.
It's understandable that you're saying, I want to dress to impress. That's literally what they were doing. Correct. They were dressing to impress. I think it's sad when you realize that they were instantly manipulated due to that ambition. And so that's just a marker. So we said, we have this time where black people were saying, we want to prove that we are intelligent, that we can dress well, and that we're not animals.
And by the way, what that video did not cover is part of the reason why they wanted to step into these stores and get these items is because even when they had the money, they were prohibited.
They were
previously.
Oh, yes.
So again, we just want to cast that light on it. We're not just trying to downplay and degrade these decisions, but we're just saying, is that the best way to go?
Oh, yeah. When you research that time, there was many black people that had to make white friends so they could give their money to their white friends to go in the stores and purchase items for their homes and for themselves. And so you're right. It was just a time where you're literally fighting for, dignity and to be equal. Now, though, let's just zoom into hip hop. Let's just go right to it. I think the hip hop generation, which is what we are, I think we were raised with just luxury
all the way out.
And I'm not trying to call out any house, because I was like, I do think the plus of luxury houses is they push art in a way that they really truly appreciate art. However, they're marketing machines that charge you way too much for way too little, and that's just the reality of it. And so we're raised in a generation that tells us, if you want to be accepted and you want to be seen as successful, you need to make sure that you are a poster boy for someone else.
Yes. Brand.
Brand.
Whether it's what you wear, it's what you drink, it's what you drive.
We live in the information age. And I think I just want to say, can we just stop for a moment? China is doing what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
They are saying everyone has misinformation about us, and we want to correct that, and we want to change the narrative about what you say about us. Props to them. I'm not hating on them. They got to do what they got to do for their families and their future. But when it comes to black people, black folk, we got to stop and say, hold on. Before we react to all these sales, and they're great sales, I myself found myself scrolling and saying, "Nah, do we got Kobe's on sale? Kobe's." Listen, I ain't
all
even
these
know.
Different colors.
So they ain't even offering that over here in Atlanta.
Literally, you can get 4 of these for the price. Anyway, but like I said, don't just react.
Before we react to what's being offered to us once again, and this time they understand we'll give you luxury for the low. That's what's being offered. Before we react to that, we might need to reflect. That's all we're saying. What if we reflect and say, hey, we work really hard for our money. What's the wisest thing we can do with it?
Because also, like China, there's a narrative about us.
There is.
And oftentimes it is not true.
It is not true.
And how we spend our dollars can play into or lead into the attempt to start to write that narrative. Now, again, we're not going to be able to control anything anyone ever says about us. But I think taking a stand and being like, hey, I don't know that I'm going to trade running to spend my money at one place of validation to running to do it all again just because I can do it a little cheaper.
Just the last episode, we talked about the fact that African Americans spend over $1 trillion a year.
Yes.
And imagine if we were just mindful where we spent that money.
I love it. Yeah.
Imagine if we began to say, hey, with $1 trillion, imagine if we directed just half of that to Black-owned businesses, to Black creators, to Black entrepreneurs. And say, we're going to find out where we want jeans. There's someone in Africa.
Correct.
There's somebody in London. There's somebody in America. We don't know where, but we can find people that have our values, that need help, that need support, that may not have the main stage, that may not have all the resources that China has. I mean, China's going to get a lot of business.
Sure.
But what can we do in saying we're not going to just run to deals?
Correct.
We're not going to run to luxury like we did in the past. And now we're not going to just run to deals of luxury. We're going to actually say we're going to be mindful as to where we spend our money.
And considering that most of these trends that the brands pushed over the years are trends that evolved out of the Black community anyway.
Ain't that crazy?
What about this thought that maybe we're luxury?
Oh,
I mean, we got $1 trillion to spend annually. We know for a fact the trends are coming from the community, and most of the trends come from the songs, which come from the community. So it's like, what if we started embracing, not to say anyone else isn't, but what if we started embracing this idea that we're luxury?
Well, back in the day, high fashion had no respect for hip hop or street culture.
Remember,
hip hop said, if you won't accept us, we're going to go our own way. So we created our own. We said over those slippers, we're going to have sneakers. We're going to have our own style of dress. We're going to have our own colors, everything about it. And it grew with so much influence across the globe.
Correct.
That high fashion had to stop and say, wait a minute.
Yes.
We have to pay attention to streetwear. And then they took streetwear, put their own little spin on it, sewed their name on it, and sold it back.
Right back to us.
Sold it back to Black people.
At a premium, by the way. Come on now.
At a premium. And we bought it because we said, thank you. We feel so affirmed. When in the end, why did we need that validation from any fashion house if in the end they're trying their best to catch up to where we were already at? And I think that's the conversation that we need to really, truly reflect on and say, listen, they took who we were, repackaged it, and resold it to us. And in the end, we need to say that can't happen again. If culture follows our music, our art, our influence, our soft power, we need to walk in that authority. And we need to say, hey, maybe it's time that the world think about us in a completely different way. And it starts with us seeing ourselves in a different light.
Now you're just preaching about life overall.
Not
just the clothes. Leading yourself well, living authentically, and understanding where true value really comes from.
True.
I think that's one of my favorite takeaways from the videos coming out of China right now. Some are funny, some are informative. I like that a few people were pointing out that, it seems, from their view, it seems as if Americans, not just Black Americans like this idea of giving money to like another company or to an external force to then feel like they're a part of something. And listening to what you just said, I'm thinking about community. I'm thinking about partnership, but partnership beyond financial resources.
Yeah.
Partnership in what community actually is. This partnership and this idea of luxury. If all these concepts, products, and realities seem to be originating from this culture and this community, then what if we not just partner financially, but we partnered with the creativity? What if we found brands and we said, hey, I'm going to purchase from you, but I also am a graphic designer. I'm an artist. I'm X, Y, and Z. I would love to just step in and offer you some services. I'm not saying everything has to be free. Everyone has to get money, but all this just reminds me, even getting back to the video of selling to the Negro, all this reminds me of the reality of just how few times the quote unquote Black dollar even stays in the community right now.
True.
Even here in America.
It's true.
When we're somewhat aware of that,
Yep.
We know that it needs to. And so I think rebranding and reframing our relationship to just validation as a whole, I think can help us see this much more clearly.
100%. I think I would say this. Of course, you can chase down some deals. We're not hating, especially if you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're you know
family,
got a family, and you're trying to get shoes and everything else. Chase a deal, but just also say, hey, how much of our money can we spend differently? How much can we say we're going to send over here? We're not going to send 100% over here or 70%. Maybe we're only going to send 30% here. Of course, I want you to support all colors. So I'm like, support everyone in your community, but be specific in saying we're going to be intentional to make sure we spend money with Black creators and Black entrepreneurs, because there's so many of them that are at a disadvantage that they need our support. So we just need to say, hey, if we're spending this much money annually as a people, then how can we do better for each other and making sure that we have the support system we need to begin to grow our infrastructure?
Right. 1.2 trillion.
1.2 trillion.
Even a quarter. That makes a huge impact.
We shouldn't be looking for any handouts. It's already in our hands. It's already in our hands.
We should be handing it out.
We should be handing it out. It's Beltline Black.
There we go.